president, desperate for a win, will talk taxes tonight in front of a friendly audience at the Heritage Foundation. President Trump insists his tax plan is a middle-class miracle. This is the plan as we know it at the moment. The wealthiest Americans will benefit the most. For salaries $150,000 and up, you'll make an average of about $8,000 more a year. If you make between $48,000 and $86,000 a year, you'll get $660 extra a year. If you make $25K or less, you'll get $60. Let's talk about that and more. Economist Stephen Moore is here. He joins me. He's the Distinguished Visiting Fellow from the Heritage Foundation and a former advisor to Donald Trump. I'd like to ask you first, if you don't mind, about John McCain and President Trump's response to his criticism of the Trump administration. Donald Trump said at some point he fights back. What does that mean?
Well, you know, there's a division in the Republican Party right now. It's a kind of philosophical fight about what the role of the United States is in the world. There's very few people I admire more than John McCain. He's an amazing American hero, and I've worked with him over the years. I worked with him when he was running for president. He has a view of a more involved American government and a U.S. military around the world. And, you know, I think this is a different philosophy that Donald Trump brings, which is to put America's national security and economic interests first always, and not to be so involved in nation building and other things. So that's going to be a fight that goes on, I believe, you know, for the next number of years within the Republican Party about what the optimal U.S. role is around the world. But
here's the thing, because President Trump does have to work with Senator McCain because he's shown clearly, right, with the health care mess, that his vote matters.
You know, the one thing I really discovered working for Donald Trump is, you know, this guy's a New Yorker. He's a counterpuncher, sometimes to his detriment. So, you know, somebody takes a swing at him or criticizes him, you know, we've learned that he hits back. And you know, sometimes it may not even be in his political interest. Look, we've got a key vote coming up on this tax bill. It'll be probably this week or next week. And John McCain's vote will be very important to the Republicans. Remember, they fell one vote short on the health care bill. So as my advice to Donald Trump would be, now is not a great time to be attacking John McCain when we may need his vote.
No, he should be inviting him to the White House like he did with Mitch McConnell, right?
There you go.
Okay, I want to make the turn, and I want to talk.
I learned
exactly.
You can go a lot
and the
further
reason
with
that
honey
President
than
Trump
vinegar.
did that is he needs Mitch McConnell to pass this tax reform package, right? So let's talk about that. I want to bring in Jennifer Westhoven. She's our business guru. And Jen, I just want you to give our viewers a sense of what's in this tax plan, and is it really a middle-class miracle?
Well, that's kind of, thanks, Carol, what I wanted to ask Stephen about, because I was reading how there's a lot of different parts of it, right? First, there's the cut in corporate taxes. Then there's the bringing corporate profits back from overseas. And then third is the part where you start talking about doubling the deduction. I kind of want to focus in on that part because that's who our viewers are. You know, that's where they'd be feeling it. I wonder, I have found that when I talk to people, when they hear doubling the deduction, in many ways, they really think that means they're going to get double the money back or pay a lot less in taxes, but they're stripping out the exemption. So they're not, it's not really changing that much when you're talking about people who are between $50,000 and $150,000. I mean, it doesn't really seem like much of a miracle for them. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, you're right that there's really three components to this tax plan. There's the business tax rate reductions, which I think is really the heart and soul of the plan, which is to try to get businesses to expand and to move back to the United States. We've seen over the years a lot of American businesses setting up factories and operations overseas. We want the jobs here in America. We hope the tax cut will bring them back. And then you're right, there will be this, we hope to repatriate some of that capital, the dollars that are sitting in overseas bank accounts. And then you're right, the third component is dealing with the individual tax code and lowering the rates for everyone. Now, look, our individual tax system, when it comes to income taxes, is much more progressive than most people realize. I mean, the top 1% pay between 40 and 45% of the income taxes, and the top 10% pay about 70%. So, you know, if you're going to provide people with an income tax cut, you know, by definition, you know, the people who pay the most are probably going to get the most back. But anyone who has a tax liability, you know, if you have an income of, let's say, $50,000 to $80,000, we think you'll get about $2,500 back in terms of your taxes. And there's a key report that came out today by the Council of Economic Advisors that suggests the average worker over the next number of years will get about a $4,000 increase in their salary from the increase in economic growth. That's what we hope happens. We'll have to implement this and see what.
But you have to admit,
happen.
Stephen, those are optimistic numbers because most economists don't think this tax plans will generate that much money in tax savings for middle-class Americans.
Well, it depends on who you ask. I mean, we've done some analysis here at Heritage, and we think those numbers are pretty much in line with what we would expect to happen. Now, you're right. There are
I just want our viewers to get a full picture.
Well, it depends.
Jen, you've analyzed this tax plan. What did you see for middle-class Americans?
Well, just one thing I would say, Stephen just said it depends on who you ask, but I think it's 85% of economists in one of those University of Chicago polls said they do not think this is going to pay for itself, even though I understand that we only have vague details. I mean, that's a significant number of economists who don't think this is going to work.
Well, you know, the polling right now is really pretty good for the tax plan in terms of, you know, I just saw a major poll that came out a few days ago that found 60% to think that it will be good for the economy and 30% say it won't help the economy.
Of economists or of regular humans?
Sorry?
Of economists or regular humans? Because I mean 85% of economists think this is not going to work. I mean, you know, regular people don't always know that much about whether these things are going to work or not.
Well, you know, we have historical evidence. I worked for Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. We had the tax cuts then. They certainly helped inspire a big recovery from the terrible 1970s. You know, John F. Kennedy cut taxes in the 1960s, and it really worked.
Yeah, but President Reagan eventually raised taxes again because he had to for the economy to roar.
Well, you know, you mean under Clinton?
Reagan.
Oh, well, yeah,
but overall,
tax rates went way down under Reagan. I mean, the highest income tax rate went down from 70% down to 28%. So that's a big, big reduction in the tax rates. And we, of course, saw the big, big boom in the 80s. And it continued in the 90s. Reagan, after he passed his tax cut, barely won re-election with 49 states. So it was certainly popular with voters. I think that's what Trump wants to do, is recreate that kind of magic.
I'm just saying that, you know, the economy also roared in the 90s, but Clinton also raised taxes.
Well, we also saw interest rates go down in the 80s. That was a big part of that.
Yeah, well,
and I know the economy is complicated, and I just want to bring it into present day because I think when you talk about cutting corporate rates and businesses coming back, I always look to Carrier in Indiana, who had all of those tax breaks from the state of Indiana, and they're still getting millions of dollars in tax breaks. And they still moved most of the company out of the country, right? And they went to automation. They didn't hire actual people, and they're just making more money.
Well, look, I mean, we do want corporations to be more successful. By the way, I just want to clarify one thing. It's not just the big corporations. It's small businesses as well that are going to get a tax cut under this plan. And remember, there are 27 million small businesses in this country. So anybody watching this show who is a man or a woman who owns a business and employs people, you're going to get a tax cut, too. We just hope, you know, look, you got to have healthy businesses to have healthy jobs. That's our philosophy here.
I guess I just want to see if it's going to be sold as a middle-class miracle, more direct lines to the middle class getting a miracle instead of it going through all these different pass-throughs and other ways to maybe land, maybe, in people's pockets.
Well, we'll hear what President Trump has to say tonight at the Heritage Foundation, but I have to leave it there. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
It was very enlightening. I enjoyed it. Jennifer Westhoven, Stephen Moore, thanks.